I'm Brittany Homer, and this is Raising Today's Kids, a Project Stand podcast. At Project Stand, we empower parents, youth, and communities to use technology in healthy ways. And today, I'm so excited to introduce to you Jenet Erickson. She is a researcher and professor who has been an inspiration to me for many years. I think I can say decades, actually, because I used to subscribe to a newspaper that she was a columnist for. And I remember cutting out and saving a couple of the columns that she wrote because I just loved them so much. I was so excited to meet her a couple of years ago when I was able to consult with her about some of her research. And then also to reconnect with her again for this episode. What I love about her is that she has just such a warm way of expressing herself. It makes me want to just curl up on her couch and just hang out with her. So I hope you enjoy her as much as I do and that you feel as inspired by her as I do. So here we go, Jenet Erickson. Why don't we just start with a quick introduction? Just tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved in this study that you do and that you teach.
Yeah, of course. So I studied nursing as an undergraduate, and then I thought I'm going to kill people as a nurse. Like when I started practicing as a nurse, I for whatever reasons, I was not wired to be a good nurse, but it was really good training for my mind. And then I studied language acquisition and linguistics for a master's degree in the process of helping people learn English. English as a second language. And it was so interesting in both of the fields, you couldn't escape this reality that these core relationships of life in family are the foundation of health and well-being and development, even though they're kind of disparate fields. And so I ended up going to a conference that was involving policy at the United Nations, and they were talking about family as in a way I'd never heard before as the foundation for economies and coming up out of poverty. And I could just see we are so deeply relational as human beings. We emerge looking for relationship. We have to have relationships to grow. And so it just seems like over and over and over again, we're going to see that reality that if we really want to address the questions of life, the challenges of life, the healing needed in life, we have to get at that truth that we are relational beings and that these core relationships that we are born into, that are the way we come into being through a man and a woman creating life. These core relationships are really the most fundamental and impactful of our lives. So that just led me to getting a PhD in family. And I was really curious about women and work and family decisions and what it meant to new life, women's work and family decisions as they were nurturing life. And so that's kind of what my dissertation work was on. And then I have just been in a variety of areas, but more specifically kind of thinking through what are the distinct contributions that mothers and fathers make to development. Are they different? Do they show up differently in children's well-being? And that's been such a remarkable journey to study that. So interesting.
Wow. Yeah. And so you chose this PhD. Didn't you do this before you got married and had children?
Yes, Brittany. And we laugh about it, my husband and I, because I got my PhD. I came and taught at BYU in the School of Family Life for a few years. And then I got married. It was such a miracle, such a gift, and had a baby right off. We've only been sent two really brave children to come to us. But I would wake up in the night and I'd think, what was I teaching my students? Like, I didn't know what I was talking about because
so funny.
It has been humbling, comical, and because it is so, to feel it in the body, to live it, is a different thing than it just being beautiful ideas in your mind, right? So
yeah. That reminds me of an experience I had. We were driving on this long road trip with my family, and my son started throwing a tantrum. We had let him be on a device too long. And
yes.
My husband and I had gotten in this long conversation, had kind of forgotten about it.
Yes, this happens.
It's time to take that away. Anyway, threw the most massive tantrum he's ever thrown in his life. I'd never seen anything like that. And we're like, what do I do? And my husband looks at me. He's like, didn't you study this stuff in school? Like, don't you know how to handle these kinds of things? I was like, oh yeah. Like I had to really dig, okay, what did my professors teach me? And what am I teaching people about these?
That is so, because the emotion in it, right? Because you're so connected to these people, like the emotion in it sort of hijacks the ideas because they aren't yet internalized, at least for me, like they have to be within me. And that's That's a practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So talking about that for a second, I know we're getting a little sidetracked from what I originally wanted to ask you, but the other day I had this awful, awful dream that my son was kidnapped.
Oh,
And it just like, I mean, mama bear just came,
oh,
like, and I'm still feeling it 2 days later. I'm still feeling this, like, this
oh,
fire in me to do everything I can to protect my son.
wow.
So talk a little bit about like what is happening in my brain that is like having this physical reaction.
Yeah, that is so, and I feel like I'm just, because that was not my PhD work, but
Yeah.
it's so important. I feel like we can't escape the reality that the core of us, it's like, people talk about the reptilian brain, then the thinking brain, and just that core fight or flight, protect the self, ego, protect those you love. Reality is just so core that it's going to be that reaction before the thinking brain can engage. And I think people would say, right, that's natural protection to keep us safe and to keep those that we are responsible for safe. And so we do automatically, I think, go into fight or flight. And it's interesting in the relational research, right? How and therapy, people will say the first thing you have to do is calm down. You have to calm down in order to engage the brain to allow you to connect and address issues in a way that's actually going to be effective. So we're so grateful that we have that reptilian side that like will save us and protect us, but it is not what we need, right? We have to find a way to engage with that differently when we're trying to do relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, okay. So we are here to talk specifically about technology and the impact of technology on children and what moms can do to protect their children. So let's start first by I want to hear from you. What are your biggest concerns about raising kids in a digital world?
Yeah. Wow. It is, I think, as Jonathan Haidt says, like we all just took it in. We took these new innovative things. It was so exciting, and these devices that could allow all of this freedom in a sense, right? Access to information and connection. And we just took it without any real research or exploration about it. And he'll say that about himself. But this is what's interesting. From a developmental standpoint, we know an infant emerges from the womb and they have to connect with a human being. And they have to do it eye to eye, body to body. And we can see now physiologically, there's all of this regulation going on with the heart, with breathing, with the immune system in both mother and baby, but it's happening through the embodiment of it, the physical connection of it. And you couldn't put a TV screen in front of an infant and create that same, even if you have bright eyes and face and all of that, you could not do the regulation. It has to be in person. So of course we know that from infancy, right? And then I think we just kind of grow up and, people were in families where they had siblings. There are always a lot of body kind of interaction and not realizing how fundamental it is actually to our development because we become so separated from the body and the mind, then because there's so much that we do with just the mind that's not embodied, where in the past people had to work physically to create, to produce. There was a lot of physical work going on. Yeah. And I think we live at a time where we just don't even think about the need for us as a whole person to interact with others, even though from infancy we can see that. So it just feels like when he writes, when Jonathan Haidt, I think he captures it exactly right. When he writes Anxious Generation, when he just writes, we have to have embodied synchronous interactions. And so if you're talking about social media or some other way, you post something, it's a delayed response. It's not in sync. And in order for human beings to really be able to develop socially, emotionally, we have to have embodied synchronous interactions that are in time and space. So that's why play is really important for children, and rituals. This is fascinating to me. So he writes about the importance of rituals. We don't usually use that language, but we think of it as like traditions. So birthday traditions and meal traditions, eating together, saying goodnight, reading stories together, praying together. These are all rituals that are very powerful. That was one of the things I taught and studied. They're very powerful for connection. And so we would say children need routines in their lives. They need to have help with getting up and going to bed and taking, whatever vitamins and eating and doing their homework. They also have to have rituals. Humans have to have rituals. And that means that you have interactions that have meaning laden with them. So when you eat dinner, you're sitting at the table in a particular place, and there's conversations that happen and questions that are asked that are consistent. And birthdays, if somebody didn't do the family tradition on that birthday, they would feel like they didn't belong. Or if nighttime, you just try not reading that story to that 3-year-old that you always read, and they aren't even able to function. And that just illuminates the importance of ritual. So Jonathan Haidt will say, we have to have human rituals of connection. They're often religious, where people are together in the same space, engaging physically in a communal kind of experience. Now, families do that all the time without realizing it. Yeah. But if all of that embodied synchronous ritual connection is replaced by technology, then you have, in a sense, deprived human beings of the fundamental need for development.
Wow. So, and that's something, it's not like you grow out of that need ever. You may do less snuggling and less, holding, as the infant grows, but you still need that as, forever. Is that what you're saying?
Well, and I'm so glad you said that, because Bill Doherty, who's renowned marriage family therapist, he has always said the intentional family is a ritualizing family. He will say marriage is the same way. So as you referenced, Julianne Holt-Lunstad here at BYU, there's so much about touch in marriage that is helpful for heart disease, that is helpful for all of these physiological processes, just touching each day, back rubs, hugging, right? It has physiological ramifications, because we're not, like, the body and the spirit are really together. And so our connection emotionally through physical has effects on us mentally, physiologically. And so it's not right snuggling as children, which I need to do more of as a mother, right? But you also need that in your marriage. And we need that with human beings. We need to be in their presence, hearing their voice. And I just think there's no question, there's a lot of evidence to say we're very connected through the world, through this internet source, and we are very lonely. I mean, how is it that Vivek Murthy could say, as the Surgeon General, we have an epidemic of loneliness, even though we're more connected than ever? And it tells you this, loneliness is something deeper than just, a technological connection with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yes, absolutely. This is so fascinating. Okay, so we at Project Stand, we are big believers that parents are the most important protective factor for their kids. So let's go a little bit more into, this direction of the role that parents have in, you talked about the biggest concern you have is this lack of connection.
Yeah.
When we get away from this synchronous, physiological touching and all that.
Yeah.
Would you say that's the protective factor, is that when parents are touching their children and having these rituals and synchronous interactions, that is the thing that's going to protect them the most from the harms of technology?
Yeah, you've said it more powerfully than I mean. So I think when we think of protection, we think of, you put up these barriers, right? Like you limit the amount of time on screens, you protect what access they have to things on screens. All of that, I think we normally think of, but I think you've gone to a really powerful place, which is it's actually laying at the foundation of their development these important connecting things that are going on. So it's filling family life, if you will, with rituals of connection. in the morning and at night and dinner time. And then they're also laden with routines where they're doing homework and they're participating actively in sports or music or other things like that, that then fill up their life with meaningful development that's all surrounded by connecting kinds of activities. And I think you're exactly right. That is the strongest protection. Because I think what happens is, so this was a hard research. We did this at BYU not too long ago, and it's just a little painful that children who are in families where there are not two married parents are using devices at a higher amount than children who have two parents. Now we could say, well, they don't have someone else to help with the monitoring, with the rules. If you have a step parent involved, it complicates the rules and how children are adhering to those. And so there's a lot of dynamics going on, but it's harder on them. So not only are they using devices for more time, it also has a more negative impact on their psychological well-being. Mm. And so I think we want to do all we can to support those families. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways we provide support is by helping them be able to carry out family life in a way that is grounded in strong relationships, where they have time, where they have rituals of connection, and their children being engaged in activities, right? Our lower income, our working class children are not doing the same number of activities outside the home. They're not participating in ways that higher income families are doing. And it leaves them more vulnerable, both to spending more time in a way that is not facilitated for development because it's mediated by technology, and also not having the core connection, those connecting activities, both to their own development and to others, that then allow them to have a strong sense of that. So I think what happens is that children who grew up in a lot of connection and a lot of development, they discern the difference in feeling when they're connecting through a mediated technological way versus connecting in a human, whole way. Mm-hmm. And so then they can choose those kinds of connections, right? They will choose to connect that way because they know the difference. They felt it. They've had access to it. I don't know if that answers, but
yeah. So for those kids or for those parents who know that their kid's situation is not ideal according to the research, what can give them hope then about what they can do and to just support their kids better?
I think so. Some of the best, and I know you know this, like some of the best mothers I know have gone through divorces. And I think one of the things that happens is they get really clear on what matters most. They'll get clear on the closeness of this relationship really matters. Where I sometimes I'm like, I have a little more space because I know Mike is going to help when I don't, or when I do things wrong, he's going to make up for it. They don't have that space. And I think they get really clear about what matters. So that's just to say, I think some of these people are our very best parents. Mm-hmm. And that what's happening, I think that's helpful for them is maintaining those rituals of connection across all the changes. Okay. So it's maintaining what we do at bedtime and what we do consistently in the morning and what we do on Sundays when we connect and what we do right in how we say goodbye and doing dinner, even if it's like inexpensive dinner because she or he may be working and also needing to do things where that would be shared by someone else. Now, it could be pizza, but just the fact that they're sitting together and connecting every day is really powerful. And so it's maintaining that. And then I think, other people being supportive in helping their children get to activities, involving their children in activities with other human beings. Yeah. And then also supporting them in ways that allow them to continue those rituals of connection in their own family.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. And so then what if it can't be every day? What if there is a shared custody and those kinds of things?
Yeah, right. And I think it's so amazing to me how when we're working on being healthy as a human being, so mothers who have found grounding, fathers that have found grounding, even in the midst of trauma and healing, that your time with those children It's magnified, even if it's less than what you would ideally want. And so just your way of relating in a healthy, connected, loving, self-regulated way, even if that's 1 week and not the next week and back 1 week, it's amazing how children, human beings, thrive in healthy spaces, and it will be magnified. And so I just think as we become more healthy and clearer as adults about what matters, how to love, then our efforts to do that, even if they are limited in some ways, will reverberate and be magnified in blessing our children.
Yeah, so they're developing resilience in those times when they are with you in that
Yes.
healthy place.
I think that's right. It's that we don't have to fear, right? That I won't have them all the time. That when I have them, my intentionality about it will be so helpful, and they'll be able to discern like what feels good and what doesn't.
Yeah. So let's talk specifically about moms. What makes moms unique in managing that relationship?
Oh, I just think so. Just to say, there's a lot of overlap between mothers and fathers. There's no question. Dads can learn how to do the same things, right? But there's also difference we can't get away from. And it's just going to show up persistently. Right from the beginning of life, an infant is primed to look for mother. They know her heartbeat. They know her voice. In the brain is a space that's bigger for the face of a woman, like looking into the face of a woman. And they really are primed to bond with her. And the mother's also primed to bond with them. So that flood of oxytocin that they experience, it's really interesting because in a mother, fathers also experience oxytocin in caring for baby, but in a mother, it elicits this cooing and cuddling types of behaviors, eye to eye, holding close, talking in a particular way. And mothers innately do that. And fathers, interesting, when they experience that oxytocin, it seems to elicit more stimulatory kinds of things like tickling and tossing in Lisa Belkin's language. So they're more likely to kind of engage with the body of that infant in a more physical way. And they tend to have a more stimulatory relationship, even across development. And that just means fathers tend to be the ones that roughhouse with children and roughhouse play. They tend to engage in a teasing way differently than mothers do. They tend to push children to do more difficult things, even though they'll say, and I'll be here to catch you, climb higher. They push independence and they set boundaries. So dads are more likely to not discipline as frequently. Mothers tend to discipline more frequently in terms of correcting children and intervening. But when fathers discipline or correct them, they tend to hold the line, where mothers will be more flexible about consequences and reasoning about it. And so her relationship, I think, is characterized by a more emotionally regulating relationship. So from infancy, she's regulating the emotions of that infant for them before they can do it. And then across development, children do tend to go to mothers more often by a long ways for emotional help. So to process something, to understand it emotionally, to get affirmation that way. And they tend to go to fathers for more problem-solving kinds of things, especially as they get older. And so I think her relationship is a very, very special relationship in that it's at the core of their identity from the beginning. It's more centered on emotion regulation and handling emotions, processing emotions, because she tends to be more that way just natively. And that's a powerful influence. So I think I'll never forget reading that a mother's, we call it maternal sensitivity in the developmental research. Maternal sensitivity is the single strongest predictor of child development in every developmental domain.
Wow.
And so
no pressure, moms, deal. Right?
And it's horrifying, right? Because at the time we're like, I don't think I was sensitive. I don't think I was responsive. And I just
I
think
don't have enough emotional regulation for myself.
I don't have enough. It's completely like, and we could just be feeling. So what's amazing about kids though, is they don't want anybody but you. They want their mother. That's who they want. And I think the power of regulating together. So it's her saying, I am not handling myself very well, gives them space to learn how to handle themselves and make mistakes in that way as well. Wow. And so that honest kind of intimate relationship that's not hiding and faking anything is actually the most powerful for helping that child. It's not a perfect kind of thing because that would barricade intimacy, but it's an honest, open, right?
That is reassuring.
We need it so much, right? Yeah.
So what about, adoption and foster care and those situations where kids aren't with their biological parents?
Yeah. Can you believe how incredible these parents are who adopt? And often many who provide foster care can be so incredible. I have so much admiration for that. And my sense is that we have to appreciate that there is a rupture that happens for that child in not having the full relationship with their biological mother. And sometimes that's the best thing, is to not have that full relationship, because that mother's not healthy and would be harmful to their development. But there's still a rupture that happens. And so just appreciating that reality, and also just recognizing the power that I think that we should just not have them experience any painful things, right? That's how we don't want them to suffer so much. But life really, there's power in the challenges that we have, the ruptures we experience, and they actually can facilitate deeper connection in our lives, because those, I like to say, where that heart's broke open, the love can get in more deeply. And so I think just acknowledging for that child, right, there's some breaking there. There's some breaking for both of us, but it does allow for that love to get in more deeply. And so it's kind of flipping things, right, from this is all loss to recognizing loss and power in the loss to actually have deeper connection and healing.
Wow. Oh, this is so beautiful. I love learning from you. I love everything you shared. And I know you don't have a lot of time, but I want to see if you could just leave a message to moms. Like, what do you wish every mom knew about her role in the lives of her kids?
Oh, it's tender to even think about, because we can feel so imperfect. I think it's so powerful to know your child wants you. They don't want anyone else. They want you. The you that is, with all the learning you're going through and all of your own efforts to care in imperfect ways. And I think somehow the imperfection of it is actually the deep bonding, because it's here I am again in the ring with you, right? I'm staying here trying to learn how to love you better, how to see you better, how to accept you better, how to cherish you better. And we will be imperfect in it. That's actually what it means, right? To be a mother is synchrony, asynchrony, like the ruptures and the healing. It's over and over again. But I think that's actually what builds the melding, is this imperfect process of continuing to try to love better, to see better, to know better. So it's what it's supposed to be, as imperfect as it feels. It's like, this is what it's supposed to be.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for your time, Jenet.
Oh, Brittany, thank you. We're so grateful for your work, right? Hooray for families and relationships and imperfection. And here we go.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So good to be with you. Bless you.
Thank you to Dr. Jenet Erickson for joining me today. I'm so grateful for everything that she shared. And I just want to reiterate a few of those things. I love how she talked about we are relational beings and the importance of those in-person interactions with each other. And she talked about mothers and fathers and how they make distinct contributions, both very important. I love how she talked about the power of synchronous interactions where we are coordinating our thoughts and emotions and body language and those things when we're together, and how those are part of our wholeness and that they can be a powerful protection against the harms of technology. I love how she talked about that infants are wired to connect eye to eye and body to body. I remember when I had my first daughter and doctors and nurses told me the importance of skin-to-skin contact. I also like how she shared that the importance of physical touch stays with us across the lifespan. Even as adults, it can help us with our immune systems and our mental health and those kinds of things. She reminded us multiple times that as a mom, your child wants you, imperfections and all. And sometimes it may not feel that way, but it is true. And I hope you believe that about yourself. I hope you gained something from this episode. If so, please like, subscribe, share, comment. All those things help this content reach those who need it. So thank you so much for listening and have an awesome day.